Morning, kids! How often do you hear the good guys of the story say things like, we've got to get as close to committing crimes against humanity as possible? The Tories just announced their new illegal immigration bill, which they say will push human rights law to the limit. And Home Secretary Suella Braverman says that under this law,
anyone entering this country illegally will be detained and swiftly removed.
And how are they justifying it? First, by saying it's democratically what people want.
To stop the boats that are bringing tens of thousands to our shores in flagrant breach of both our laws and the will of the British people. These are decisions supported by the British people, precisely because they were decisions made by the British people.
Sorry, did anybody vote to send desperate refugees to Rwanda? I mean, listen to the language she's using. Will of the people. She's trying to argue that people voted for this back in 2016 when they voted for Brexit. But even if that was somehow on the ballot paper, which it wasn't, hasn't that vote expired by now? We've had 2 elections, 5 prime ministers, and 1 million broken promises since then. But this is what populists do. They pretend that whatever they want is actually what the people want. This is why referendums are often called the tools of dictators. Give people a choice between keeping things as they are or the vague promise of something different. And then you can decide what different means 7 years later.
The law-abiding patriotic majority have said, enough is enough.
Did you hear that? According to the Tories, if you don't support sending refugees to Rwanda, you're not patriotic. Here's part of the Encyclopedia Britannica's definition of fascism. Unlike democratic conservatives, fascists accuse their political opponents of being less patriotic than they are. So what's the actual will of the people? Well, according to a YouGov poll from December, when asked how to solve the issue of channel crossings, the first choice for 39% of Brits, the largest group, was to create safe routes for people to claim asylum in the UK so they don't have to cross the channel in unsafe boats, compared to just 10% who support the government's plan of sending them to places like Rwanda. And the thing is, Suella Braverman knows she's being dishonest because a couple of months ago, she literally said that if a 16-year-old from Syria wanted to claim asylum in the UK, they would need to enter the UK irregularly in order to do it. And this is why the Tories are often accused of dehumanizing asylum seekers. Because if you for 1 second put yourself in the shoes of somebody who wanted to claim asylum in the UK, you'd know that you would never risk drowning yourself and your family in the Channel if there was a safer option with a realistic chance of success. But the Tories want you to see asylum seekers as a big unthinking mass scrambling for Dover, yet somehow with a preference for criminality. That's why she just referred to those people as
waves of illegal migrants.
Or, like a few months ago, as an invasion, again to support the narrative that the patriotic thing to do is to push back against them. So it's no surprise that in that context, we've had a terrorist attack against asylum accommodation. And she knows that many people can see through this, and so she says,
we will, thanks to this bill, be having a more comprehensive discussion in how we go forward on allowing safe and legal routes furthermore into this country. Once we make progress on stopping illegal migration, it will enable us to better support those genuine victims for asylum.
Really? Does that order make sense? We need to stop irregular migration before we create legal asylum routes. But she's already admitted it's the absence of legal asylum routes that causes the irregular migration. So surely it makes more sense to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and start by creating those safe and legal routes. Unless, of course, she has no intention of doing that. Because I remember when Priti Patel said they would be
welcoming people through safe and legal routes.
And that was in 2020, and she used that to justify her anti-refugee policies. And here we are 3 years later, and they're still recycling the same lines. But here's where Suella Braverman really goes off the fucking deep end.
Let's be honest. There are 100 million people around the world who could qualify for protection under our current laws. Let's be clear, they are coming here.
If that feels like total bullshit, it's because it is. Here are the countries that have taken in the most refugees on the planet. Why? Because the vast majority of people fleeing persecution stay in neighbouring countries. And even within Europe, Germany, Italy, France, Austria all have larger refugee populations than we do. And the ones that do come here, it might be because they have family here, or because after centuries of colonialism, stealing other countries' resources and people, forcing our cultures on them, we've become the 6th largest economy in the world with the most common second language in the world, and so one of the easiest places to start a new life. But to say that all of the world's asylum seekers are coming here is criminally dishonest. And when talking about the ones who do come here, she says that they
all travelled through multiple safe countries in which they could and should have claimed asylum.
Funny, so tens of thousands of Ukrainian asylum seekers traveled across several safe European countries to get to Calais, and then you help them across the Channel and even put them into British homes. But someone from Tigray in Ethiopia, where the humanitarian crisis is worse than Ukraine according to the World Health Organization, if they come here, they should be detained and sent to Rwanda? What What's the difference? I can't quite put my finger on it. Because the fact is, according to the international treaty called the Refugee Convention, people have the right to claim asylum in any country they choose as long as they go there directly. And according to the case law, directly just means you don't settle in any other country first. So no, you don't have to claim asylum in the first safe country. Because let's be clear, when you hear someone saying they're not real refugees, they've passed through several safe European countries to get here, they're not fleeing anything. They're really saying that because the UK is an island on the other side of Europe to most conflict zones, then unless France bursts out into all-out war, we have no moral obligation to take in a single refugee despite being one of the largest economies on the planet.
Many of them are economic migrants.
But according to the government's own figures, 91% of the people who've crossed the channel in recent years are from countries where there's a legitimate reason to flee. And about 3/4 of asylum claims are successful, meaning they are literally mostly refugees. But I do find it interesting for the government to take such a hostile approach to people coming here, whether they're fleeing persecution or just looking for a better life. Because this is the same government that recently cut their foreign aid budget, and they're still selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, which are being used to bomb hospitals and schools in Yemen. So we're effectively bombing civilians in the Middle East while making money from that, in fact, 10 times more money than the money we give them in aid, and we're cutting that aid while telling them to go back there while our bombs are still falling on their houses, or just shipping them off to Rwanda as punishment for daring to seek our help. Rule Britannia. But I love this bit.
My own parents, Mr. Speaker, decades ago found security and opportunity in this country.
That's the equivalent of saying I have black friends. Like, I couldn't possibly support policies that are cruel to foreigners. My parents used to be foreigners. Cool story, bro. Your predecessor, Priti Patel, admitted that her policies would have kept her own parents out of this country. And we live in a world where Candace Owens, Kanye West, and Kemi Badenoch exist. So everybody already knows that being a minority is no guarantee that once you achieve privilege, you won't then use it to crap on other minorities who weren't so lucky. But the biggest irony of the whole thing is the title of the law itself. The Illegal Immigration Bill. Because for starters, she couldn't guarantee that it wouldn't violate the Human Rights Act and therefore international human rights law.
We can't make a definitive statement of compatibility under Section 19(1)(b) of the Human Rights Act.
So it may actually be an illegal migration bill. But also this.
The risk remains that these individuals just disappear.
According to the Refugee Convention, as long as they reach out to the authorities and apply for asylum within a reasonable period of time, their actions are legal. However, as several organizations have warned, this policy of sending people to Rwanda if they cross without permission is likely to result in more people not notifying the authorities that they're here, in which case they become illegal migrants. So this illegal migration bill will create exactly what it says on the tin. But my main point is this.
The asylum system now costs the British taxpayer £3 billion a year.
The Tories have been warned that this policy is basically unworkable, partly because Rwanda's already said that they only have space for about 200 people. It still involves locking people up, so it's not like that 3 billion figure would be reduced to zero. Because surprise, surprise, every country has to have an asylum system, and that costs money. But the Tories want you to think that it's asylum seekers who are costing us money, damaging our public services and threatening our safety. So I have 3 questions. Who crashed the economy last year and delivered a Brexit that cost us £100 billion a year and is damaging the NHS? Who messed up handling the pandemic with what the parliamentary inquiry called one of the worst public health failures in UK history at a cost of tens of thousands of British lives? Is it refugees? Have a great week.